Hi, in this video I'll be demonstrating how to repair your earphone wires or your headphone wires. These are specific wires that tend to be enameled. Over here I have the lead of my earphones and they've been cut. So what I need to do is repair this. Right, so I'm just cutting this. So now I have the two pieces to work with. Now what I need to do is I need to expose some of this insulator. So I'm going to expose from about here. Now ideally it's best to use wire strippers. I use wire strippers because it leaves a little hole there and then we don't cut through the copper. So oftentimes the conductor we use is round and then the wire strippers is the best option. Because this is flat, I'm going to just take my side cutters and just make an impression. There's an impression. I haven't cut through anywhere, and now I just take my nail and I try and tear it. Right, so it's coming. Yeah, there we go. So I'm able to expose the three wires here. There are three because we've got a left, right, and then the ground wire. So these are the wires which I'll be working with. Now I need to do the same on this side. I don't want to cut through the copper, I just want to expose it, and there we go, there are my three conductors. Now what I want to do is put something called heat shrink on this, because once I've joined these wires, I don't want to be using insulation tape, because insulation tape is bulky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some heat shrink and put it around the insulator. Now heat shrink comes in different sizes and different colors, and I'm going to use this black one. So I now take the heat shrink and I put it over there. And since this is quite close to the edge, I might be able to use the heat shrink to actually extend this. So when it's finished, it should look like this, a neater version of that. I'm actually going to open this a little bit more so that the heat shrink doesn't have to be so long. Right, so there I'm exposing the copper, there is the wire, and over here I've got the wire. So I'm going to put the heat shrink on now. And the reason why I put it on now is once I've soldered the wires together, you can't really get the heat shrink on unless you go around that corner, which is quite hard. So there's the heat shrink, and now what I want to do is I want to connect these wires. Now a little problem is these wires are insulated as well. Now this one is green, then this one is red, and this one is copper colored, and they actually have an enamel coating over it, which is an insulator. That means that if I go like that, even though I've twisted these together, they are not electrically touching each other. They are just in close proximity to each other, and I'll just prove it to you right now. Over here I have a multimeter and I've set it to measure continuity. Continuity measures a short circuit. So if I touch the leads together, notice the meter says 0 and it makes that loud beeping sound telling me it's a short circuit. So if I take this wire over here, this is just a comms cable, and I touch from there to there, it's a dead short, which it should be because this is an exposed piece of wire. Same as if I take the face of the side cutters here and I touch there and there, it's a short circuit because it's exposed. It's exposed metal. Now, let me show you what happens with these earphone wires and headphone wires. I'm going to touch over there, and then I'm going to touch over there, and notice that it doesn't matter where I touch on this lead. Doesn't matter where I touch on this wire, it's not going to be a short circuit. So what has happened is there is an enamel coating, sometimes it's an epoxy coating on top of the wire, and that is why it won't make conductivity. Even with extensive twisting, they are not electrically touching. So the next step is to get this enamel off, and the best way to do that is to either sand it off, which is quite time consuming, or to take a lighter and burn it off. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a lighter, I'm going to burn it off. You might even notice an extra flame while it burns the protective coating off. So watch, there you can see how it actually burns. So there's something there, it's not just the wire. So I'm going to do that for 3 of them. I don't want it to burn right to the end there, so I'm just stopping over here. There's quite a lot of this enamel here, so I'm going to do it a few times. Yeah, I want to see the color change. There we go. So there's no more epoxy on there, and I'll do the same on this side. Just be aware of which was the green and which was the red and which was the copper color, because one is the ground, one is the left signal, and one is the right signal. Remember that the earphone is stereo, left, right, and the common. So I need to do the same on this side. Now I've removed that enamel. Now some earphones, even if you've removed the enamel, if you take a soldering iron, for example, here's a soldering iron, and I take some solder and I try and tin it. Tin it means just get some solder onto the wire. Look at this. it's still got something on here. Look, the solder is not getting onto the wire, even if I hold the soldering iron here for a while. So the next step is to clean this, to sand it down a little bit. Not all earphone wires will give you this challenge. Some will be immediately ready for soldering at this point, but this one is quite dirty, so I'm also going to just clean it. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some sandpaper and I'm going to sand it. I'm sanding it. I'm putting my finger there and pulling it across. And this is taking off any further insulation. And you might even notice the nice copper color coming through. Just getting any additional insulation off the wire. Okay, these wires are now ready. So I need to do the same on the other side. This is an 800 grit sandpaper, but you can use a 200, a 600, a 400. It's just a rough surface just to remove any more of that enamel. Right, so the wires are now ready. I now need to twist them. So I'm going to start with the outermost wire, which was the green, and I get it close there and I twist it. Now I'm going to do the outside wire on the other side, and then the middle wire. Right, so there are the 3 wires, and now what I need to do is solder them. They would work just like this, but there is still a contact resistance between the wires, even though they are twisted. So I'm just going to take my soldering iron and I'm just going to put a little bit of solder on each one of these wires. You might need to hold it for a bit. Still got some enamel on here. Yes, there, it's taken nicely. Right, and over here. Right, it doesn't need a lot of solder. As long as it turns silver along the path, it's fine. So I've got a little bit there, there's a bit there, and a bit there. So all I need to do now is cut it a bit shorter because I don't need these pigtails. Right, now I just need to keep these separate from each other. So I'm just using small offcuts of insulation tape just to separate these 3 pieces. Right, so now I can fold these inwards because they are now insulated. Now there's the repair, and I'm going to quickly test it. Right, there's the earphones, and if I just play it. Right, that's the left, and that's the right. So I know that the repair is working. I'm going to put this heat shrink over it to make it strong. But before I do that, I just want to add something here to give it some rigidity. So I have this cable tie, and I'm just going to put the cable tie about that long, and I'm just going to go like that. And in order to give it some rigidity, I'm going to use this cable tie inside here, and I could even put some glue here. Right, so there's the cable tie and the heat shrink. Now I'm just going to put this on here. Right, now I'm going to take my lighter and shrink the heat shrink. Now I'm going to let that cool down. Right, now there is the finished repair. It's strong. Even if you pull on it, you're pulling on the cable tie. So the cable tie is offering some support there. And then if I do a quick test, and the right. Thanks for watching, and cheers.